Everybody, it's Dr. Boz, and we are live here with Keto in the Wild. I am coming to you from a boat this week. I had a kayak 2 weeks ago and a swimming pool that we got kicked out of last week, but this week we are live from a boat. And I appreciate you hopping onto the other stream. I am hoping you can hear me well. There's somebody mowing their lawn about 2 doors down, which is totally my luck. But I have a great show for you tonight and something that I have struggled with. This week is the third week in a series that we're calling Keto in the Wild. And it has been a few lessons that I'm trying to share with you that after 20 plus years of watching patients have some incredibly motivated, ambitious patients try to break the mold, to not be in the same cycle as what their parents or what they had, their genetics said they were supposed to be. I call them cycle breakers. That there are some rules or some trends of cycle breakers that I can usually spot out in those patients after a few meetings. And so we've taken the first couple of weeks to tell you a couple of lessons about them, and this week might be the toughest one I teach about. So stick around. We've got some great content for you. I've got some, I hope I can be as intimate in the stories that I shared earlier in my day, which was with my support group, as I am this evening. So I have a couple of announcements to make, and then we're going to get to that lesson, which I think you're going to find probably the most valuable of all the 6 lessons that we're going to go through. I divided the year up into 2 times where it's really a temptation. The temptation of holidays everybody can relate to and says, yeah, if you can be the same weight November 1st as you are on January 1st, you've got to win. But I think the same applies for summer. If you could be the same weight June 1st as you are at the end of August, wow, that's a big win. So these 6 weeks where we're doing Keto in the Wild, I'm on a friend's boat, and I've been wearing my swimming suit for the last 2 weeks, but I got on the boat and I wasn't willing to change out here where the neighbors are watching. So we're going to do this out without my swimming suit this week, but it really is a lesson I want to hopefully you guys take great pride or great value from, because I'm going to do my best to be as vulnerable as I can to teach this lesson. Before we do that, though, I am going to do a couple of quick announcements. I don't have my other's screen, so I'm just going to show you BozMD.com. There is a really special place called Careers that we are still looking for a couple of video editors. We're looking for folks with some experience. And also, you have to know how to use Keynote. Yeah, it's the PowerPoint for Macs. Definitely a prerequisite that has helped us sort for folks who are like-minded like us. Oh, you know what else I forgot to do? I forgot to check my sugars. I'm on my weekly fast, and it has been going okay. I mean, I've done well, but I am wearing a continuous glucose monitor, so I will tell you that I learn a lot about myself when I don't sleep well, or I start to wake up if there's a storm and then don't fall asleep for about an hour. Dang, I can't believe how much it affects my sugar. And I know I've told that to hundreds and maybe thousands of patients, but it just still shocks me when it's my blood sugar that gets messed up. All right, so that's my blood sugar going in and my ketones here about to go in. And I'll show you my numbers here. Yes, counting down. Blood sugar of 80, which doesn't surprise me. Ketones counting down here. Yeah, 1.3. That's about right. Yeah, it's been an okay fast, but I think the restlessness at night definitely gets me. Dang, it's hard to get old. All right, so I showed you the one thing I wanted to show you on the website, but there is one more thing, and that is for those of you that have not checked out Dr. Boz Favorites page, first of all, I just want to say thank you for everybody that clicked on the little link I gave to my son. I think lots of you watched his video and saw what he's doing this summer. Not a single person signed up to help him out, but I said, you know, son, I can help get the word out, and I will continue to pray for you. But door-to-door sales is hard, and he is well, he's on a great learning curve, and I couldn't be more proud of him. So thanks for watching last week, and all of you that clicked on the video. Any of you if you want to learn more about what he's doing, you can watch the video. He does a great job. The other things are the announcements, and again, I don't have my side screen, so I'm doing a great a link inside the favorites page. Keto Orlando is actually next weekend, so if you are in the spirit of wanting to meet the interns for the summer who've been this awesome help, really nothing better than working around the next generation. And well, it reminds me how old I am, but it also is just inspiring to see what they know, how quickly they learn things that I don't, and then to be motivation for them and to help just pave the way for where they're headed and maybe be just a tiny part of where their journey ends up. But they're going to be helping me with Keto Orlando next week. I will be doing some question and answer, so we'll see you on Saturday if you're there. But the next one is another free session that's coming up by my friend Dr. Mindy Peltz. She has a webinar coming up that is free. We did one of the lectures together, and I think I'm on the first day. If you sign up, there's like a week session where all of the lectures are free, and then I think there's some upcharges if you want to watch those videos afterwards. But she's done a great job of getting together some of the leading experts, and I think whatever we can do to help her succeed, I have that in there. There's some other things in here that you guys have been asking for a long time. I'm going to make this one nice and big and show you that, yeah, for those of you that have been asking, what sauna do I recommend? I finally put that in my favorites page. It's been a while since I have said I'm testing them, I'm looking at them, and I have a couple shows coming up that I'm going to teach more about what I learned from the sauna and why I picked that one. But it really is great. There's a little discount code there when you sign up through our website. Go through quickly what I did the last 2 weeks. Again, this series is the patterns that I see in people who break the cycle. And that we've had a lot of people join our channel over the last 4 months. And we're thankful. It's really great to have new viewers on here. But it's helped me reflect, how do I help these new people also get what many of the people who show up on my Tuesday support group get, which is, how do you break the cycle? How do you become a cycle breaker? And you know, the best lessons I learned about this were the years of helping with addiction. You know, nothing like a leaning on alcohol for years as their main coping skill. And then finding that it doesn't carry forward well. They've gotten to an abusive level of the use of that alcohol. And now we need to retrain that 50-year-old brain or 60-year-old brain, or even 40-year-old, 30-year-old brain. How do you break the cycle of a habit that you've had? That many people, when it comes to their weight and their metabolism, they say, oh, you know what? It's in my genetics. I'm meant to have this. There's no way I can get out of it. But I'm telling you, that's not true. There are patterns where I see these ambitious patients trying to change, trying to get out of the path that, you know, that destiny says you must be in. My parents were fat. I'm going to be overweight. My parents had diabetes. My sister has diabetes. I'm going to be overweight. And in the end, these cycle breakers have taught me some rules. So the first week I talked about, in a season where these patients are tired, they rest, but they don't give up. And that's what we talked about the first week. The second week, I used my son's door-to-door knocking data to teach you that the people, the second really big theme is data is their friend. Data will carry you through this slump. That data, unlike my sweet husband, when I don't feel well, he'll tell me what I want to hear when I'm in those moments of, you know, emotions that don't make sense. But the data does not lie. And being able to just have that contract with the data that you're not going to stop looking, that you're going to keep documenting, my goodness, it is so key to the people who are in that changed life, that they've lost the weight, it stayed off, they're on a different course. There's really 6 parts to this, and I'm trying to give you each one of them this with 1 week, one lesson a week. So as I looked this week, It's the one I've struggled with the most. And I'm going to tell you about 3 stories this week. One is going to be mine, and I'm going to show you how I would walk a couple of patients through their stories. As you might have guessed, if you watch this show enough, I use the folks that come to my free support group in Tampa as a place where teaching in person is so much easier for me. I can see the response, I can have follow-up questions, and I'll use some of those teachable moments here on the show. But today starts with the people who, the third lesson is that they know their triggers. And triggers are this word that that can, make people click off. It's like, oh, this is touchy-feely. But I'm telling you that after 20 plus years of studying behavior, triggers are an action, a thought, a feeling that cause a response that is almost primal, that's almost so reflexive that patients can't stop it. That the trigger is a key moment that if you want to be a cycle breaker, you have to dissect your triggers. You have to know your triggers. So I'm going to start with a story about me, and then we're going to go to a couple of patient stories. We're going to use some tools that I use in the clinic to teach, and I hope I can transmit that image to you from a mobile phone. So I look at my trigger, and it's changed through the years. It used to be very, actually now that I think about it, when you get to the end of this, and hopefully I can be intimate enough during this, because it is very vulnerable of me to share this. I'll tell you, it was easy when I was in the support group this morning. I again re-practiced this with my team, which is a small team of 8 people, and sharing with them was easier than the support group because it's a rather intimate part of who I am. And I'm going to try to be that vulnerable to you, so be nice. But as I look back through the years, I used to think my triggers were other things. I used to think it was stress. I used to think it was, sadness. When a patient's journey was sad, when a death would happen, when an error would happen in medicine, I would find that as this place where I couldn't really forgive myself as easily as, I think it's supposed to cause pain. That's how you change behavior, but I really was hard on myself. And I look back at the last, at least the last year, and the trigger is very easy for me to identify that my trigger is when I'm trying to relax. When I look at a time where the work is done, I'm on the couch, we're going to watch a show, the time is over for pushing hard. There's this thing called relaxing that, well, it's hard for me. And I was doing this exercise with a patient about probably a year ago. And as he is answering the questions that I'm asking, like most times when an adult learns something, my mirror neurons are triggering. He is answering the questions in a way that are true for me. And in the moment I don't share that, I'm helping the patient, but in my mind and in my heart, I know what he's saying is true in my own life. And that is, I can hear my dad, and I bet my brother and sister can hear my dad too. We grew up on a farm, and we were a family of 5, and there was very clear rules that you were rewarded if you were the hardest working, if you got up first, if you worked the longest. I can remember hearing very early mantras that were, that are really core values for me, that time is money, your value is proportional to your effort. And if you're looking at a process that doesn't have outcomes or some way to see your efforts, that your value is less. Now, don't get me wrong, there are much worse things my dad could have taught me. Working hard, being from the Midwest, having that cultural work ethic is something I'm really proud of. But we might have taken it too far. That whenever I go to shut down, I reach for this thing that comforts me. And whether that comfort is carbohydrates, which I like, I think everybody, if you're being honest, likes them, or a glass of wine, those are reasons where I will shut down. And in many ways, I think when I would go to shut down, I would want to check it off the list, like, hurry up, now shut down, and do it in a hurry. Like the opposite of why you should do that. I'm going to use this tool to show you how I would get there. So this is called an emotion wheel, and I am going to open this up and draw on it. So an emotion wheel is just what I've said there, and that is to look at your emotions. And your emotions can be divided into many different quadrants, but I think it's easiest. This is a PDF and a downloadable tool that comes from humansystems.com, or maybe it's humansystems.co, C-O, not C-O-M. And she divides the emotions into comfortable and uncomfortable. And when I'm interviewing patients, I often find that's the easiest sort. Is it a comfortable emotion or not a comfortable emotion? And as much as shutting down should be a comfortable emotion, it wasn't. It was a time where I'm like, is it safe to shut down? Is it okay to relax? And I know this sounds really like, oh, how cute that you have this problem of shutting down, but I couldn't even admit this to myself prior to a few years ago, where I took such pride in working hard, of pushing hard, of having the longest one, just being that much of grit will get me through, that saying this out loud, I mean, it is a little laughable, but that discovery is also what will make sense when I tell you the other people's stories as well. So when I would use this wheel, I would have them look at the wheel and say, okay, before you look at the wheel, find the last time where you fell off the wagon and you've had a hard time getting back to where you were before. And think about what was going on that you fell off the wagon. So the last time I fell off the wagon is when I went to the Love Boat. That's the nickname I call the keto cruise. I promised my husband this year I would not bring my computer. I was not going to work on the Love Boat. I was going to do my lectures, which was part of my responsibility, and then attend to the conference. But after that, I was not going to open my computer the whole week. And instantly I wanted a glass of wine and some carbohydrates. And of course you're relaxing, and I don't care that it's a keto cruise. It's relax time. So let's get that busy. Come on, let's relax. And even as it was happening, I could feel that it was happening, and I didn't care, which is exactly what a trigger is. It's reflexive. Your body's not giving you permission to pause and think about it. So I have the patients write down the last trigger they had, and then I have them find the emotion of what is linked to the time when you were eating that food. And when I look at my time of, okay, what was happening when I was eating that food is I was anxious and feeling stressed, which brings me to a second wheel, which is why I like this gal's website so much. She has not only a feelings wheel, but a needs wheel, which you say, what the heck is that? Well, let me show you. Hold on. Yeah, emotions wheel is what she calls it, and then it's a needs wheel. Okay, so the needs wheel is this one. Okay, oopsie daisy. I'm gonna open it up and show you. And you can download these off her website, but really you can Google them and find it about anywhere. This is what type of need were you trying to satisfy when you offered that food in the moment. So I was anxious. I was like, okay, it's time to shut down. Hurry up. And what was I trying to accomplish? And when I look through this, it was truly that moment where I wanted to be quiet in my brain. I wanted to be at peace. I wanted to not have the checklist. And of course, shutting down was part of the checklist in my mind. And that sense of why is it so difficult for me, it took a lot of time. It actually took some skills that we'll go through with some other patients. So let's move. So that's a little touchy-feely, and you may not relate to it very well, but it's safer because it's me. So let's move on to my support group this morning. So I asked them to check in with something that triggers them. And one of the first folks that checked in was somebody I really have been thankful to be part of his life. He's been coming to group since January 1 of last year. So over 18 months, one of the first folks to come to group, and has really consistently come for this whole year and a half since I've been doing a support group at the bowling alley across the parking lot. And he had a heart attack about 4 months ago. Since the heart, and he was keto, he was doing well, and despite many improvements in his health, he still had a heart attack. So it's been a great teachable moment for him. And as I look at his ability to really return to something that I'd love to see him doing again, which would be weekly fasting, something that I think his severe insulin resistance, even though he's not that overweight, he's got the numbers and a family history to show, boy, dude, when you were fasting, these numbers were a lot better. Let's see if I can help you by being part of the group, part of the example, and fasting. So when I asked him what his trigger was, he answered a couple things, but then he quickly got to something that created emotion in his voice. He talked about how he has 10 siblings, and of those siblings, all of the sisters are dead. They died in their 40s and 50s. That all of the men in his life die in their 50s and early 60s, and he's the oldest of the men, but he's also the healthiest. His brothers, well, they're a walking time bomb with severe diabetes, severely elevated blood sugars, and the trigger, he was trying to say the trigger, but the trigger is the holy ship of triggers, which was to confront his mortality, to think about what is it like, what if all this still ends in my early death? And as he thinks about that, you might guess that it's a flood of emotion. It's a flood of being overwhelmed from having too many reflexive choices happen, and the first thing he thinks about is, well, how do I comfort this? I don't care what the food is, it might be the last meal I get. And as he talked about that, his persistence in coming to our group, in really fighting against what the culture in his family says, which is, who cares? Everybody in our family gets this problem. There's nothing you can do about it. Your genetics are truly in your face. And I pointed out, the most powerful thing you're doing is just like what a cycle breaker would do. And that is, you're working on yourself, and you're an example to your son, who doesn't have to be in the same cycle, who can see by the imprinting of dad, who's really trying to change things, and he's alone. Everybody else in the family either is dead or doesn't have the genetics, some of his in-laws, or they're so severely ill that they are having a tough time trying. And so I look at his triggers and that confrontation with mortality and think, well, that's the mothership. I hope that's not everybody's trigger, but if we're all being honest and you look towards that, or you get something in your life like he had, which is a close encounter of death, you will feel that sense of, well, mortality, and in will flood these reflexes. I think the third story of this morning is the one where I'll be able to teach what you can do about it. Because if you want to be a cycle breaker and you can identify your trigger, it's the third story of tonight that helps me teach that the best. So this woman comes in, and she's been coming for a while, and she is just a lovely woman. But like anybody, she has family. And she said, I had come back from a great weekend, and I walked through the door, and my husband was just grumpy. And he grumped at her. Rawr, rawr, rawr. And, she's happily married. That's what happily married looks like, for 47 years. But she says, when that grump, when that feeling of barking at me happened, she said, Dr. Boz, everything you've taught me completely left my mind, and all I wanted to do was eat. And I did. And when I feel that, that sense of, somebody barking at me, especially when it's disconnected, like it didn't make sense in this moment for her, I instantly want to eat. And I think this is exactly where, if you look at how I unpacked that sense of, why do I keep falling off the wagon every time I go to relax? This woman, I don't know her history. I'm going to guess on these things. So if you know the woman from group, I do not have insider information, but I've taken care of so many people just like this, where they say, Doc, I couldn't think about drinking alcohol. I just found myself drunk again. And I'm like, well, go back to why you headed for the drinking in the first place. You know, it's not about the alcohol. It's not about the carb. That's your comfort. And what you're comforting has to do with an emotion. And, you know, as she describes her, you know, that attack of a husband when he was in a bad mood. And she's like, you know, he did this and I ate. My reaction was because of him. And we call that an external center of focus, meaning she's focused on things outside her control, external focus of control. As opposed to what we want her to look at is an internal focus of control. And this sounds all psychobabble until you say, well, how do you figure that out? And the answer is, now again, I don't know anything about this woman, but in the years of practice, you'll usually find that there was a time in that tween, like pre-teenage to teenage areas, where that brain is rapidly growing. Specifically, the hippocampus is growing. And there is a disconnect. Something happens, whether it's a time of neglect where mom and dad were going through divorce, the attention for the child was suboptimal, or maybe there was actual physical abuse, or maybe it was a time where there was just such trauma on the family that, again, the nurturing time for that teenager or pre-teenager was absent. But whatever the cause, there was also a lot of barking that had happened to this woman in her earlier years. She doesn't know that. I mean, at least they don't at the beginning. Just like I didn't quite connect that. Why do I get so stressed when I go to calm down, when I go to relax? The answer comes when you can tip into that subconscious. Okay, it is a subconscious memory, and you do that for protection. She doesn't want to remember it, and you think, well, good Lord, it's in the past. What do I care? Well, you care because it's linked to your trigger. And when you look at people who are cycle breakers, they break the cycle. They're able to get out of the ditch. They are able to zoom on to the rest of the health of their life. They understand at least what is causing the trigger. So I would postulate that this woman at the age of 12 had something happen where there was lots of barking at her. And when the barking happens, she coped with food, which is this legal, safe, abundant place in America that you can find food. And she comforted with it. And as her brain developed, especially in those rapidly growing years, she learned that when life is dangerous, just reach for the carbohydrates. And she will not be able to change a behavior in this trigger until she recognizes that that little girl going through that difficult time needed somebody to love her, needed somebody to have forgiveness for whatever mistake she made, needed to have grace. And the people who were there in her life to give her that were either spent, distracted, or absent. And it is the best practice that as she works through this conscious, subconscious moment, and I'll give you a few tips on how I help patients do this, that she will find that her adult self is the one who can love her. Her adult self can love and have grace and have understanding and forgiveness for that 12-year-old going through whatever she was going through. And it is because in that triggered moment, this woman needs to love her husband in his grumpy mood. And she can't do that any more than she can love herself when she gets frustrated. I know that's really advanced psychology stuff, but it's totally true. When patients reach this moment where they transcend past and they have an understanding and they go off in their path and they don't need me anymore, they break the cycle, it is because they understand what part of that conscious subconscious is something they're not giving enough credit to. And my favorite trick to do this, and I really appreciate the therapists out here that do that, is a technique called EMDR. It stands for I mobilization, eye movement, desensitization, eye movement, desensitization. I can't remember what the R is. Anyway, somebody can type it in. Anyway, maybe it's not ritual. But it's like the therapist works to almost pseudo hypnotize the patient, which sounds wonky, I know, but it's a rhythmical eye movement that goes back and forth, and as they do it, the brain starts to relax. And actually, at KetoCon, there was a technique. There was a virtual reality headset that called BrainTap that is using this technology. Now, I still think the therapist has a lot of value, but you got to practice touching that subconscious again and again, especially when your brain's 60 and you're trying to reprogram it. Reprocessing, that's what the R stands for. Thank you very much, Wesley Novak. It's reprocessing, yeah. So to reprocess when her hurt happened, when that neglect happened, it is now in her adult years triggering her. And she is reaching for what she comforted herself with at the age of 12, and she is going to do that until she's in the grave, unless she can reprogram how that moment, have grace and love for that little girl, and then, only then, the next time her husband's barky, when she's not ready for him to be barky, she will have that skill to love him as much as she loves and has grace for herself, and it will not send her into the trigger. So I tell you all this because triggers it is what most people can't stay on keto for. Yes, they can learn the rules. Those are easy. We do lots of things to teach the science behind it. And we had somebody in our support group this morning say, I just want everybody to watch that video you did. And then he was talking about something about average blood sugars. And it's like, it's the best video and I share it with everybody. I'm like, thank you very much. I appreciate it. But logic never changed a behavior. There are several mantras in that, but when triggers are a repeated pattern that you're willing to look at, it does take a moment of strength. It does take this moment of vulnerability. And I know you can make fun of the fact that my trigger is shutting down, but it is truly something that brings back, if I'm good enough, I will be the one that works the hardest. If I'm accepted, if I'm that firstborn, get praise from my parents, and it's a great problem to have. It is definitely a first world problem, but it's my problem. And it's what triggers me to say, yeah, relaxing turns into this place where I put it on my checklist and I want to get done with it. I know it sounds awful, but it's my problem, yeah. And I will keep working on it. I am not perfect. I still like my carbohydrates, and I like scheduling my downtime with a glass of wine every few weeks. It's not something I do often, but I will continue to offer these patterns that I've had the God's grace to have been taught. They come to me, they ask questions, and many of them that I don't know the answer to. But after 25 years of serving them, the cycle breakers have taught me the most. And it is my intention that if you're watching the show and you're this far into the hour-long lesson on a touchy-feely subject like triggers, I hope you can become a cycle breaker. I hope you can, when you get tired, you rest, but don't give up. That you, number 2, no, data is your friend. And number 3, you are able to identify your triggers. All right, we're going to take a couple of questions. I again appreciate what you folks sticking around. This is the only place that I do answer questions, and for this 6 weeks in Keto in the Wild, I am trying to be less intense. Can anybody tell? And not do this didactic slides, but really take time to teach some of the things that I think are really important. To also make sure I give the announcements and the people that are really supporting my channel. So please check out that favorites page. I had somebody last week ask me a question, and I have it right here. I'm going to answer it. It didn't make the show, but I want to totally make sure I talk to that. So Nathel V says, which fat is best to add to coffee during the eating window? MCT oil, butter, or cream? So Nathaniel, that's a very good question. I love how you were very specific about your question too, that you said during the eating window. During the eating window, the best one to add is actually MCT oil. That fat, carbon for carbon, produces higher ketones than any other fat. That's why it's such a valuable supplement. That it's a brain fuel, but it's also, so it does even better than caffeine, and I'm a huge fan of caffeine. But if you're looking for that persistent ketosis, that energy boost, which is why most people drink coffee, there isn't a fat out there that turns into a higher ketone production than medium chain triglycerides. Now, specifically, C8 and C10 are the two that I recommend. I do a lot of my patients are struggling with brain injuries, whether that's depression or alcoholism or a head injury or Parkinson's. I am a big proponent to making sure that the carbon length is 8 links long in the chain and 10 links long in the chain. All right, second question, Sheila says, in the video from several years ago with Jennifer Marie, you mentioned something about no hair on your big toe. Oh, I love this. Can you go over what that means again and what to do? I don't remember which video it was. Oh, Sheila Q, that makes me so happy that somebody remembers this. So yes, Jennifer Marie was a wonderful season where she wanted me to help her with keto, and I needed to learn a lot about social media, so I helped her and she helped me. But hair on the big toe is actually really important. So again, your body has well, let's just start with cells are supposed to be this tightly knit and fit pattern, and when they are swollen or inflamed, there's space between them. That's called inflammation. It's also called swelling. And when you have that chronically in your feet, there's a few things that stop. One of the things that stops is you stop making hair on your toe. It's a reflection of circulation. It is also a reflection of your average blood sugar. How high, how long have they been diabetic? Are they pre-diabetic? If you no longer make hair on your toe, I can guarantee you, either you had trauma to the top of your big toe and it no longer has hair follicles, which is very rare. A burn can do that. A major motorcycle accident with road rash can do that. But if there's not hair on the top of your toe, it's because those cells don't fit tight. They have swelling in them. And that is a circulation issue. When circulation is compromised, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle, period. And the first way you'll know that struggle's happening is you won't grow hair. So you say, well, doc, what do I do? Well, you got to get the inflammation out of there. So what's the number one best way to get inflammation out of there? Oh, lower your average blood sugar, stop having a volatile blood sugar, and make sure lower your blood pressure back to normal. Oh yeah, all the things that when you're in a constant state of ketosis happen. How long will it take for the hair on your toe to grow back? At least 6 months of stable blood sugars, of stable blood pressure, of the thumb shin print, meaning, I've gone through this a few times, when you look at your shin, it should have this nice bony ridge on it. When you push on that bony ridge, and you do it for 30 seconds, enough to take the pink out of your thumbnail, meaning you're pushing hard enough to blanch your thumbnail, when you pull your thumb off of your shin, there should not be an indent in there. That is, if there's an indent, it's not fat, it's swelling. It's the same problem that causes your hairs not to grow on your big toe. I'm so thankful Sheila remembered that. That's awesome. Paige has another question. Says, is it all right to continue taking MCT capsules daily after becoming fat adapted and getting into a goal weight? Yeah, the MCT is especially in the elder years, the reason you might want ketones around is, number one, for muscle protection. I don't want my patients to have this declining muscle mass. And although a good workout is helpful, a good workout in the state of ketosis is even more helpful. And you'll have a lot of people who, when they're fat adapted, they will make ketones when they stress their system, but they'll bottom out of those ketones pretty easily. Supplementing with MCT keeps at least a 0.5 ketones around. And why would you want that? Because those ketones are a signaling agent. They signal to cells to do things like not use your muscles as any type of energy when you are decreasing the calories. I know we don't talk about calories a lot. I only talk about calories when it's later in their story. But the supplementation of a C8C10 MCT keeps that at least baseline of ketones, and it is uber important for my elders so that they do not compromise the muscle mass. It's like the opposite of why Ozempic depletes so much muscle mass. Ozempic still stimulates the production of insulin. So their appetite is nothing. They stop eating, but it is a stimulus to insulin. And when that insulin is up, the ketones are down, and they use muscle as a source of energy. It's why their face changes so much when they're using that for weight loss. That's a whole different topic, but it's like the opposite of Ozempic is keeping ketones in circulation, which is what you can do with MCT. All right, Monica, we will use the last one for you. Monica Lucas says, should I drink ketones every day? Well, I don't, but I drink them often. So again, I like to have my coffee in the morning. I used to have coffee all day long. I'm cutting back. One of the perks about being one of the interns is you have unlimited Starbucks, and I put it on your app so that you can go pick up your coffee and mine. So they know that I have, several shots of espresso in the morning, and that's just the way my body works. But as I try not to drink coffee in the afternoons or evenings, which I don't anymore, but my energy sometimes will slump especially if I'm dealing with something heavy or I'm trying to write. I put ketones in my brain, and boy, things get done a lot faster, and I can concentrate without having the consequences of not sleeping so well. So drinking ketones does keep that body remembering what ketones are, which you say, oh, well, how would they not remember what they are? But when people go into insulin resistance and they get to that stuck phase where they're not losing weight anymore, they're checking their ketones, they're like, doc, it's 0.2, I never have ketones. I'm like, well, just drink a few, and then you're going to have to find a way to stimulate the production of them. So I think of drinking ketones as this great holding pattern. Not have to fall all the way back down to the bottom of the ditch to keep a state of ketosis present in their day-to-day lives until they can get their game back on and maybe tackle those triggers. That's how I use it in most people. That's not what I tell my cancer patients or my seizure patients. That's a different story and probably doesn't apply to most of you. All right, I just want to give a big shout out for Patrick V and his support of our channel. He is just steadfast in his presence and always out there, as dependable as they come. So God bless all of you for tuning in. We will have another cycle breaker lesson for you